everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker Training. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of fmtraining.tv, where every day we're doing great FileMaker training. And today is no exception. In fact, today is an exceptionally cool day. It's very, very awesome. I've got some super smart people who are here, have been working on a demo for us. And so I'm going to kind of help tee it up a little bit because I need to let everyone know kind of how we got to where we're at a little bit, because it's interesting as to why it's like, this is so amazing. How come I haven't heard about that before? Well, I'm going to explain that to you. And then once we have that, we are going to move forward with the demo. So real quick, if you go to fmtrain.tv, there it is. Today is day 1 and day 2 of Audit Logs with Calvin Moseman. This is new tech. And so today is going to be a little bit of homework about how the new tech works, why it works. Towards the end, we're going to start banging out the audit log. And the best part about it is if I'm understanding this correctly, this is yes or no. This is just drag and drop and then it works? Is that
almost
true? Almost drag and drop and it works. As opposed to, so you're saying I'm going to sell less training. I need to sell more training. I want to take everyone's credit card.
You need the training so we can walk you through and make it as close to drag and drop as possible.
So you buy the training, which is awesome. And so Margaret can go to that page real quick. Buy the training here, then we pay everyone, and then they build that's so awesome you don't need the training. So awesome you don't need the training. That's awesome. So let's talk about what we're doing today. So transactions. Okay, so back up. So transactions are this idea in FileMaker, or this kind of asset idea for those of you who have a programming background. And that is a transaction is something where you're going to do some edits to a database and you're going to do all this logic and work. And I'm going to add this data and create this related item and put this data in and do all this stuff. What a transaction does, it does the save to the FileMaker server at one time. And so it's kind of, they call it atomic. I don't really like to use that word because people start thinking nukes. And so there are no nuclear weapons involved. I'm just going to say the word, it's binary. It's all or one. So when you do a transaction, it saves it to the FileMaker server or in SQL database or somewhere else. It's all or nothing. It's not like when most of us write a non-essential FileMaker script, like I'm at Big Valley, and they say duplicate this discrepancy, and so it starts doing this duplication. And if for some reason the FileMaker server crashes, a client crashes halfway through the process, no one's going to go broke. Nothing's going to go bad. Nothing negative is going to happen. You might have a halfway incompleted record that's not really critically essential, and they would understand it because no money really attached to that. It becomes, so if you had a process that was half complete and then it died, the popping sound, it dies, then that's not the end of the world, right? But if you have a financial deal where, hey, we're going to move this money and it's a bank transaction and we're going to move it from bank A to bank B, and say it goes only halfway, then the internet goes out between the banks or the SWIFT banking system or something, some sort of node on the SWIFT system drops off for a bit. That transaction has to be all or nothing. Right? Either you're going to move $1 million or you're not going to move $1 million. I remember we bought the helicopter and it was like the biggest pile of money I'd ever moved in my life. It was crazy. I've never done a wire transfer for 100 grand or whatever it was. We did several deposits and payments and things like that. That's a big number and it's kind of scary. And so what happens is that is all or nothing. You don't want it to be half baked. So that is transactions. Transactions were brought to the FileMaker platform back in FileMaker 20.0, right, Calvin? Somewhere around there is when they first were introduced. Something like that.
This the OnWindowTransaction was 20.1. So
okay, so that's the misleading one. Go back over to the right. What's these script steps over here? So we have the 2 script steps. Yeah, open training. Yeah, do that one. Yeah, you got help. Open that one down there. So the ones that we have trained on before are open transaction and complete or close transaction. What's the other magic? Commit transaction. So one is begins this statement and we're going to do a bunch of stuff, but none of it's going to be saved to the server until we get to the end when we say commit, and it all saves in one block, like one big block, and it shoots to the server. Even if you're writing a record and create new records and edit this record and go here and delete this and do this, it doesn't do it. Save it to the server. Normally, as you're writing a script, there's times where it's saving all along the way. Ting, 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 ting. But with commit, it saves the save. It's saving the save till the end. It holds the save back until the end. So we had these 2 features. These 2 things came out in 19.5 or 6. Oh, there it is, 19.6. And so what happens is then shortly thereafter, Claris came up with another thing called transaction. The word transaction in it. And this is it right over wherever yeah, there it is right here. So they had this thing called OnWindowTransaction. And I'm like, and everyone was like busy learning stuff and doing stuff in the meantime. And so they throw this little thing in here subtly that goes in, and we're like, okay, it's more transaction stuff. This has nothing to do with the previous two script steps, other than the fact that the word transaction is a generic term for the database interaction, like a process to save, a transaction. It's a generic, this is the Claris. Calvin, if you could move that file option window just down a little bit so we can see the script steps. The open and close commit transactions on the right really have nothing to do with the thing on the left, but I assumed as an instructor, it kind of did, and no one was excited about it. It was like, hey, whatever. And I guess there were a couple people who probably understood it, but they're not your trainers in the community, I guess, right? And so what ends up happening about what happens with this is that someone goes, hey, we have this new audit system. I'm like, oh, great. The next new audit system. There's been new audit systems every couple of years for the last 30 years. And they're like, no, this one's really great. So Calvin was at Engage, and it turns out that the OnWindowTransaction has nothing to do with the other things. It's a totally separate process. And it's a file level trigger. So it's a file level trigger. So over here in this window, if you open a FileMaker solution, you go to File, down to File Options, you will see this dialog that pops up over here on the right. And normally this is where the other day, Margaret, we set the startup script, right? The closing script, the on first window open, and all that kind of stuff is all in here. So we've been here before, but if you scroll the bottom, there's this transaction thing, and we're like, what possibly good, awesome thing would come out of, because Claris creates a lot of triggers sometimes that are like, what the hell are we using this for? Like that AV player one has to do with, if you're in Hollywood and you're demoing videos and FileMaker on an iPad and you're in a Hollywood studio, it's like, what was that? The movie, the Tropic Thunder movie, and Tom Cruise plays that movie producer, this ruthless Les Grossman, right? So this is the Les Grossman trigger right here. It's like, I'm going to show you this awesome movie. It's on my iPad. You click it. And that way people could do Hollywood and FileMaker. So every once in a while, Claris builds these weird outline kind of things. And you're like, whatever, right? So then Calvin comes along and goes, dude, you've got to see this. And I'm like, dude, I do? And he says, dude, definitely. So Calvin, I'm going to hand this to you. This is how we got to where we're at.
Okay.
And so you're going to do some backstory of what this is, and then you're going to show us literally a drag and drop audit trail that you can drag almost anywhere. And
I drag it into FM starting point, and it worked.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to watch.
So I will. So let's just kind of take a look at what OnWindowTransaction does. And because it works a little bit different than these other scripts, like we can select a transaction, select an on first window open trigger, on last window close trigger, and most of the time on these, you'll notice that we don't really have a script parameter, but in this case, we do get to specify a script parameter, but instead of specifying the parameter itself, we're specifying the field name, where we're going to get the parameter from, which is a little different. So what is OnWindowTransaction? We can think of this kind of like an on-record commit. So we already use the on-record commit trigger that we can find in a given layout. So the on-record commit, let's go into layout mode, and then look at our script triggers over here, and we have an on-record commit. But the on-record commit trigger happens before the commit happens. You can actually cancel the commit in that. And the on-record transaction, OnWindowTransaction, happens after the commit. But it's just about the same time. You could almost think of this almost like the on-object keystroke versus on-object modify. On-object keystroke happens before the data is entered, while on-object modify is after the data is entered.
So I'm going to intervene right here. So it's almost at the same time, but once again, we're back to this almost is like horseshoes, hand grenades, and nuclear weapons, right? We had this the other day. So if it happens before, the general idea is that your trigger script can then cancel cancel the action, right? But this one on window transaction is a post. So the window is actually already closed or is closing, right? And so you can't abort it, right? It's going to happen regardless. Is that correct, Calvin?
Yeah, so that's one of the interesting things here. According to their documentation, they say you can have a false script result in the event that triggered the script is canceled, but I'm not sure what they mean exactly by that, because when does the script run? After the event has been processed.
We'll do a test real quick on it. Just do a test real quick.
So I'm going to start. So this is, all I did was I created a new file starting with their contacts demo. So you can follow along and do the exact same thing. I'm going to call this one on window transaction.
Which is really on, it's on window, but it's because it's file, it's every window.
Yeah, because it's on
so
the
it's
file
really
level,
on. If I was going to
every
name
window.
this, I would call it on all windows, just because that's what I do. I think about all the confusion. Someone's going to be confused by it. If you call all windows, then you'd be like, not just one window. Okay, so we're going to run that.
So we're going to turn this on, and I'm going to just say show custom dialog. And I'm going to give this one the title of get script name. So we're going to compare this and the on record. So let's go ahead and save that. On record commit. So here I'm going to put in a name. Oh, records are present. New. Put in John. And now I'm going to commit the record. Now, we're not running a script here to open or close a transaction, but because we are clicking outside of the field, it's performing a commit, and when that commit is finished, that's the transaction being committed. So I'm going to commit that, and here on window transaction, this script ran, and it gave me that dialog. Now let's do another one. I'm going to call this one on record commit. Show custom dialog, and I'll do the same thing. Get script name. I'm just going to say okay, or extra. I'm going to leave that cancel in there. Cancel. So, and now I'm going to go into the field options. So this, or the layout setup. So this is on the layout level, and I'm going to do on record commit and say on record commit. Now let's call him John Appleseed, and I'm going to commit once again. And so I get the on record commit. I'll say, okay, now I get the on window transaction. So now we're seeing the order that these are happening in. The commit happens first, and then the transaction. Now let's try something else. I'm going to say if get last message choice equals 2. And if we remember here, I'm going to put in cancel.
Yep.
Just say, do we want to cancel? So if that last message choice is cancel, I'm going to say revert. Actually, I'm going to say exit script.
Yeah, and then the script result is 0 or 1 or true or false.
Yeah, and false is
a 0. Yeah, I normally would do it with 0. That's fine. So cool. All right.
So here I'm going to change his name to Jonathan.
Right.
And watch what happens here. I get cancel. I'm going to say cancel. Now the transaction didn't finish, so the on window transaction trigger didn't happen. But it didn't revert the record. It still says Jonathan, but it isn't committed. I can click over here again.
So it's not. So we lost the focus. So it did not preserve the focus, but the record is still. No,
because I clicked out.
Yeah. So it's not. It's not the object is not in focus, but the record is still locked. Okay, that's interesting. Right. Okay, great.
Right. So sometimes I use this technique, having the exit script false with an on record commit script in like a card window if I want everything to be saved all at once, and I don't want people editing and saving while they're in there. Usually it's because I want to have a cancel to revert the record. So let's try this on window transaction, and I'm going to say if get last message choice equals 2 exit script false.
Yeah, this is what I want to see.
And I'm going to say cancel, just so we know what's going on. So watch this. I'm going to go back to John. We're going to call him Johnny now. So cancel. I'm going to say this is on the on record commit.
Okay.
If you remember, I'm going to say okay. Cancel. On window transaction, I'm going to say cancel. And look, it's committed.
Okay, but back up. It's committed, but but that was the on window.
So I said yes to on record commit, but no to on window transaction. So
I'm curious if you add like a beep at line
I'm confused. I'm confused. Yeah.
If you add like a beep, will it still beep? Actually,
if you do last message choice 2, it's not going to be.
It'll beep. That's what I'm asking.
So back up.
Okay.
So can I back up a question here?
Yeah.
So let's back up. And this is one of those I'm having a learning moment. Like the reality is really setting in. So a commit is a save. Basically, when we say the word commit, that's a save to the server. So we said, yes, save it to the server. Is that correct? So it should have saved to the server. Okay.
Yeah.
But then okay, forget database shenanigans. Because a transaction is basically this block of data we're shooting to the server, right? That's why on the scripts previously, you could start one, you'd end one, then at the end, it would shoot the whole thing. In this case, it's saying that on the window, attempting to save to the server, but it's already saved to the server. So what the hell is the definition of a transaction here in this case? If we go back to help and we read that very carefully. What does that say?
So let's go ahead and read this. It performs a script and creates a JSON object, which is the next thing we'll look at, after a transaction is successfully committed. So that's what's key here. It happens after the transaction is
so let me
successfully
help out
committed.
with everyone.
So
Right,
a transaction is anytime a commit occurs?
Here's the problem with this, is that this implies that you had to have a transaction going in the script. Because with the word transaction has been a reserved word in the FileMaker community for 35 years, we never, ever officially used it. Then they add the script steps. Then they reference it here. What this is, performs a script and creates a JSON object after data has been successfully saved to the server or committed to the server. That would be the proper, this is why, okay, back up. This is why we ignored this. This is why we ignored this. So Calvin, you're saying there doesn't have to be a transaction going on the other side, right? On the script.
Not in the script. It could just be a commit.
And this implies, because we've never used the word transactions before in the way the rest of the database community really uses them, they use them all the time. Transaction this, transaction that. We have data, we save, used to be save the data, then we commit the data, right? So then we have this commit idea. Then we have this idea of transactions. Transactions up until FileMaker 20, using that script, the script step, beginning and ending it in a script, okay? This means that any time you have edited the data and the data is being saved to the server. Correct, Calvin? Do I have that right? Okay. Yeah. That's why this is so confusing. Now I remember why I saw this and went, why do I need a trigger? This is why. I came out in 20.1. We're like doing the live streams. We're going through all the new stuff. And like, why would I want a trigger to tell me that a script commit transaction script step has run? Because I'm already in a script. Why do I need a script to tell me that another script is run? It would just be a subscript. We'd call it. This is why we do the training. So
the next thing I'm going to do is put in a get script parameter option here in both the transaction and the on record commit. Get script parameter. And we don't, and in both cases, we didn't define a script parameter. So what's the script parameter going to give us? This is a little interesting. Do you have a question?
No, I'm just saying, I assume it's nothing. I'm just talking back to you since you're asking.
So on record commit is empty. There's nothing there. We're going to say, okay, on window transaction automatically comes with a script parameter, which is interesting.
Really?
Now what this gives us is one, the file name. So contacts is contacts. Next, the table name, which is contacts again. Next, the action was modified, and next the record ID. And then we'll see here we've got quotes, but nothing in it, and that is something that's where we are allowed to pass information to it. So if I create a new record and commit it, so now we've got contacts. This instead of modified is new. We're on record 2. We don't have any information there. So okay. And so that is the default for how we're getting this. It puts it already in a JSON block. And actually, I didn't even tell it to make the JSON look pretty. It's all automatically doing that for me, putting all this white space in there. So it's a little more legible, which is interesting. So I'm going to disable that commit because we're not going to talk about that anymore. The on-record commit trigger. It's just kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
And now, so I want to go back to what's in this JSON object. The JSON object includes the file name. Let's look at this while we're reading through this. So here we are. The JSON object includes the file name right here, the base table name, the record ID, that's number 2, the operation that's modified, and the contents of the base table's field named OnWindowTransaction. And that would be in these quotes. Now, if we go into Manage Database, we don't have a field by that name. So I'm going to just put a field in here and call it OnWindowTransaction. Oops. Let's put that in quotes. So I just put it in as a calculation field, and there's nothing in it. So, but I just wanted to show how that came out. So here's our OnWindowTransaction script data. It's referencing a field.
So if
Yeah.
you name the field that, it'll automatically hunt down the information even if you didn't specify the field in the original script trigger?
So by default, it is OnWindowTransaction. Now, if I go into File Options, Script Triggers, I can change that field name to anything I want. I can say the field and say OK. And now it's empty. But if I go back into here and change this to the field change, now we've got that back in there. So by default, it's called OnWindowTransaction, but you can define it as whatever field you want in the file options under the script triggers. Now, what's interesting about this is it's not asking you to select a field because it's assuming you're going to have a field by the same name in every table. Whenever you run the script in any table, you need to have that field name in there. So it can be whatever you want that to be. So I'm going to change it back to OnWindowTransaction. And let's change this a little bit more. Let's say change. So kind of the goal for this is to start an audit log. So let's try this. We'll say get modified fields and start with that. We're going to change it to text. And on our storage, we're going to say do not store. Let's see what happens now. Oops, cancel. So here we go. Now we've got context. We got our file, our table, our action, our record ID, and here's all the fields that were modified: first name, initial, modified by, modification timestamp, and this /r is a return. It's just putting it in a single line for us in there. So so you can see where this is going. That we can do a lot more with this and start collecting data and pass it to the script, and then from that script generate this audit log. Do we have any questions up to this point?
Yes, but I'm going to read it. And can you add information outside to transactions log? What do you quite mean by that, David?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's meant by that.
But universally, the reaction is that, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah. So this is just where I just set this up in a blank file. Let me go ahead and pull up a sample file, or one of my work files here, and we'll start making this a little more interesting.
Okay. I had some questions, which before we do this real fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
like, can you add time to the transactions log? So are you saying like if you wanted to like add like current time, could you add it to it? I assume you could with the parameter passing.
Yeah. So you could put anything you want in there. So let's go ahead and look at that. Let's go to here. So let's change this. Instead of say modified fields, let's say JSON set element. And we're going to say, let's just put that there. Our path is, I'm going to just call this one audit. Actually, let's do this. Let's go. We'll put a few different things in here. And so what's something we want to track? The time. We're going to say audit dot time stamp. That's what we're going to call this in the audit in that thing. And we're going to say get current timestamp. And we're going to call this one JSON string. And then let's also do another one. We're going to call this one modified fields. And I'm just going to stick this one in here. Call this one JSON string as well. So now instead of just passing text, we're passing a block of JSON that will be included in that. So let's see what happens. Put that in there. So check this out. So now we've got the file, the table, the action, and now in our audit, we've got our modified fields, there's a list, and our timestamp. So we can pass whatever we want. Whatever we put in that field is going to show up in here. And you can do more information or less information, whatever you want to do. Any other questions?
So if you change the name of one of the fields, then how can you later see all the changes for that field?
Yeah, so if you, so in the demo that we're going to look at in a moment, it's just saving the field name. I guess you could save the field ID if you really wanted to. Let's try that. Actually, I don't have the, I think there is a custom function that does that. Let's see if that's an FM starting point. I'm in FM starting point. I'm going to go File, Manage, Custom Functions, FM, sort, FM. Yeah, it's not in here. Cancel. So let's see. So the we can loop back to that. That might take a little time. I don't want to take that from the audit log things. Okay. Are we ready to jump into the audit log, the demo that I have?
Yeah, I know
Or
that.
any other questions first?
No, I
So
think
if you
good.
save it in the audit log and you change the field name is going to change in the audit log, not for any future records. I've never had that become a problem. Usually when there's an audit log, we just want to see what the changes were. We're not necessarily, and if the change from last name to last to name last, that's not really that big of a problem. Any other questions?
Is it per computer or could it be centralized?
Is what per computer?
The
script trigger?
Yeah, I assume
The script trigger is on the file. It's per
so if
file.
so it's on the server, it should run, right? So
yeah, so it's going to run. It's going to run no matter who. So when we look at if we look at FileMaker Pro and go to preferences, this is machine specific preferences. So this is going to change things on my machine. If we go to file options, this is changing it for the file, whether that file is hosted or not. And so in this case, it's not hosted, but if it's on the server, it's saving it on the server for everyone. And that's actually one thing so right now it says login using. When you can, over here, you can specify a username and password to automatically log into your app. I wouldn't do that on a server app. But sometimes people get confused the difference between having setting up a username and password in file options and setting up a username in preferences. So you want to save your username in preferences, but not in the file options. That's not a good idea for security reasons. That's kind of off topic though. Any other questions before we bring this up?
Someone asking, people asking if you can add username, IP, host name. I assume if it's a get function, you can add it.
Yeah, you can add anything. So you can manage, what are these? I'm sorry, we were looking at it's in the field here. So I'm using get functions right here. So you can say, maybe you want account name. Account name, get account name. Maybe you want IP address, get IP. Maybe it's what is the IP, local IP? System IP address. And I'll just give this the same name. Okay, so now when we say, now when we change it, there's all that information. So yeah, you can put anything you want in there. Obviously, you're going to be creating a lot of records. You don't want too many records. So let's go ahead and take a look at this demo file here. So here, I'm going to create a new record. And I'm going to say, actually, let me just go. Let's go to this layout. Okay. So here we're in our contacts, and I'm going to say, John Doe is on 1st Street in the city, California, 95054. Okay, so we'll see here, in this case, I have this field called Z underscore OnWindowTransaction underscore audit data. And it's putting a lot more data than just just those few things that we were doing in our first demo. In fact, we're showing, we're putting in a bunch of, we're not only getting the field names that were changed, we're also getting the field type, standard text indexed value 1, indexed 1. And then we're also getting the field value. So here, we got the value of John. This is a little interesting. So let's go ahead and actually take a look in the data viewer at this field on, and I'll say JSON format elements. Now, one thing I did find is that if I format the elements in this field, it did cause problems for the script for some reason. So, I'm not formatting the JSON in there. So here we're seeing I'm getting the field name, the field type, and the field value. And then I'm getting an environment, and that's where I'm tracking the account, the ID, which is actually the primary key for the script, for the what is it called? The record. I'm getting the layout, any script that's running. So if it's a script that's running, it would pull up, but there's no script. And then the base table name, which is contacts. And you'll see we're in the audit log table, and we're looking at the this data. Or no, this is the, I'm sorry, this is the, I defined this as audit, data, and then environment. So let's say monitor, we'll leave that alone. And now what I did here is I just committed the record. So this is local, so it runs really fast. If I open the audit log, now if you've seen our audit logs before, this might look familiar. Oh, and so here's our records. And we'll see that it happened at this date. Now, the date is just grabbing the current timestamp. The user's admin, the layout is the contact details. Action is modified. Here's the list of the fields and the value of each of those fields. I can search those, and I can see whatever I want to see in there.
Is this audit log record specific? So it's like the audit log for this record specifically, or
yeah. So if I do a new record and say Tom Jones, street, city, state, zip, and commit this one. So we'll see there. Now bring up the audit log. Now this is for this specific record. So we see Tom. Maybe we want to change this to Thomas. Change that to Thomas. And so now when I open the audit log, we'll see that it went from Tom to Thomas. And you'll see when we say new, there's all the new records. And here's the, then we have, this is what the record values were when it was new. And this is when it was modified. And so let's change this to T-Man. So we see, now we can search and say name. Now, one thing that's different in this one than the last one is that we don't have a from and a to value, but I don't think we're losing that much here. See, we're just seeing what that new value is each time. And if we want to see the old value, we can just do a filter and see by that name what's going on. Now, next thing I'm going to do is do a copy. So this is where it gets really cool. Is I'm going to select all and copy. And I am going to, so I just saved the primary key. And I'm going to do Command E to delete this record entirely. So I just deleted that record. Now, what happened when we did that? So I'm going to, so I just created this new audit log button, and instead I give it the primary key of the record that I want to look at. So generally, it's just looking at the record that we're currently viewing. Now I'm specifying it as a deleted record. So here we see what the record data was when it was. So we've got new data, we've got modified data, and we've got what the data was when it was deleted, which is interesting. And so the transaction doesn't just happen when it's committed, or it is a commit when it's deleted, but usually when you delete something, then we don't have any information from it. We have to save that before it's deleted. In this case, it gives you all that information in the delete, which is really cool. Do we have any questions about that?
Not about that specifically. I do have a question about can this PSOS, how does this interact with PSOS? So
yeah, so I haven't tested this with PSOS, but if you look at this OnWindowTransaction, I do have the global field. Essentially, we're passing it a parameter to the script, and the script here is working. The audit log create is working whether there's whether it's on the server or not. So I believe if we ran this, it should work. I haven't tested on with PSOS yet, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. Or and that's going to be one. So once we test it on that, which I would, I would probably, when I implement this next, I would probably use PSOS just to make it faster and have the on record, have it run without waiting. But I think this is just so fast. I don't know that unless it's a huge record with hundreds, of fields, it shouldn't take very long to create those records because it's just creating and saving. It doesn't. So PSOS could speed it up, but I don't know how much we would need to.
I assume that the benefit mostly be so you don't accidentally try to run two scripts at the same time. Though if you're saying it's going that fast, then it really doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Lynn, can you show the calc that gives the field type, etc.?
Yeah, so let's go ahead and, so we're going to walk through this. And let me grab my data viewer. Oh, where is the data? Down here. So the get field type is new. So it's just called get, or no, it's called field type. It's called field type. So then you say get file name, and then you can say address, city, evaluate. So there it gives us the field type. So if I say, I think I can say get field name, and then just actually put in the name itself in case it changes. So let's put the primary key in there. So standard text 1 address city is going to be unindexed. Let's try date indexed. Z created by, this should be text unindexed. So you can kind of see what's going on. Let's try that Z on window transaction. What's this one? Stored calc text unindexed. So so it gives you this. I was using it for testing purposes. I wouldn't actually save the type in the field type in my audit log. But I thought it was interesting. That's why I left it in there. Any other questions?
I'm gonna ask two. What happens if someone deletes a record? Do the audit logs disappear?
So if you had cascading deletes turned on, you could make it so it disappeared. But like I showed you here, we're saying that this record was deleted at this time. So not necessarily.
Got it. If someone deletes a record, how would you know what the UUID for the deleted record was to search for it?
Yeah, so if you go to, so you would have to set something up to track what that was. Maybe you could have like a table of deleted IDs and then review those. But if you go to the audit log, and I'll just search the action, say delete. So here's all the deleted records, and here's all the primary keys. So these were the primary keys that were deleted. Any other questions?
Where are you saving the collection of logs?
The logs are just in an audit log table. So if your audit log is going to be really big, you could do it in a separate file. If you want it, if it's in the same file, that's fine too. But it depends on how big your audit log is. So I have some of my audit logs are over 1 million records. So at some point you start thinking about how you can expedite things by putting them in a separate table or separate file. And you'll see here, I changed the layout name. And so it just changed what it said here. If we changed a field name, so let's say someone was asking about changing a field name, go back over here. Let's change name first to first name, change. And now I'm going to say, change it to Joe. Now when I open this, we'll see that we've got a name first and a first name. If I do first, we see a couple first options. And I guess I can't use a wild in a quick find. But that's what happens when you change the field name. It just comes up as another name in the audit log, but usually that's not a problem. I haven't run into it being a problem. Any other questions before we dig into how this works?
No, just universally agreeing that this is very cool.
Oh, good. Okay, so we do have another interesting thing here is that maybe we want to show this over here. So if I do a new window, and as you know, closing a window performs a commit. So I'm going to change this to Johnny Apple. So I'm going to close this window and we'll see what happens. I say close, and we got this. You'll notice the window closed and we got the on-window transaction after it closed. But we still get all the information from that first record. So let's go ahead and do that again. Window, new window. And let's turn on the on-record commit. This is kind of interesting. So we'll say on-record commit, on-record commit. So I'm going to change this back to John. Now, when I close the window, you notice we get the on-record commit right away before the window's closed. I'll say, okay, the window is closed, and now we get the on-window transaction. So if you're closing a window, if you're doing edits in a card window, it's just good to know that that on-window transaction performs after the window's closed, not before, which I found interesting. Okay. So we're kind of running out of time. So we did put this into a 2-day thing. So we're definitely going to dig more into these scripts tomorrow. So let me how about I'll kind of give you a sneak peek for tomorrow.
Yeah, let's do that. That'll be fun. Yeah.
Okay. So so what I did is I took the audit features and made it into an add-on because I thought that would be cool. And then I just added it into FM starting point. So watch this. I'll go to contacts, create a new record, and let's do John Doe. And so all I did was drag and drop. So I had to do 2 things in here. I installed the add-on, and then I had to, I guess it was 3 things. I installed the add-on. I went to file options and added the script trigger on window transaction, pointed it to my audit log script, and then pointed it to this field on window transaction. So that was the first thing, or a second thing. And then the last thing is I added this field on window transaction to the table. So here's our on window transaction.
Got it.
And then, so 3 steps, pretty close to drag and drop.
That is pretty
So
close to drag and drop.
I just created John Doe here, and let's look at this audit log. Here's the audit log. Now there's a lot of fields here, you'll notice. So we got, and you'll notice this all just happened. All that was created
when the record was created.
Immediately when I created the record. And you can see what layout it was done in. Now the only change I made to a layout was I put the view audit log button in here. If I go to the list and put in a number, it's a little extra long number here. So I just changed it. I didn't make any changes to this layout. Now look at this. Now I've got all of the changes that were made in that list layout. So these were all based on all those modifications. Now if I go over to, now let's go to accounts. I didn't do anything with accounts. Let's do a new ABC company. And I do want to put my audit log in here. So here's my audit log. And I'm going to set this as ID account. Now watch what happens. Is it going to work? It's not going to work because we haven't done the
you need to add the Z thing.
the field in there. So I'm going to say copy, accounts, paste. So here's this. Let's just make sure that we're pointed to the right fields. So I'm going to say timestamp modified. And here I want the TO1 ID account. So the primary key, say OK. So let's do a new, we'll do XYZ company. View audit log. There's all the changes at this moment.
That's really cool.
And you'll see that there's a lot of things we don't really care about. ID constant, nah, we don't really want to care about that. So we're going to look into how to avoid some of these things that we don't really want to track.
How to parse it down to the information you need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just the information we need. We'll look at that tomorrow, and making this a little more useful. But you'll see that it was 3 steps to get it to work in one table, and then one additional step for each table, just adding that field in there. And then if you want, most of the time you don't even need to view it. A lot of times when I have audit logs, the administrators want to see it. Nobody else needs to see it. It's hidden in the background. We don't even have a view button.
Yeah, you just
This
need
is
to
a
have
really fast way to implement, as opposed to the previous way that we did it was we were doing it on each object, which still has its place. We still like that method. But this is just real slick and fast.
And then Richard has a current log entry been doing for BVA, which we have to edit the JSON parameter of whatever the hell we want it to say every single time we add in the PSA script. So
Yeah. So I do like how legible some of those are. Putting in the little little message. This was edited by so and so at such and such a time, and it makes it real legible for somebody coming in. But
it is much more time intensive to set up, though.
Yeah, much more time intensive. And I think what's going to end up happening is that I'm going to have 2 logs. One that's an action log that just tracks what happens in like this really descriptive, a script started at this time and did this, and one an edit log that is just field changes. Do we have any questions before we wrap it up for today?
There was a question about how you're storing it to the log table, but I assume we'll talk about that script tomorrow.
Yeah, that's all performed through that OnWindowTransaction script and the create audit log with parameter script. So that is what we're going to dig into. We'll dive into that tomorrow. Any other questions?
Just people saying, way to go, Calvin. Very nice. Thank you. Wow. Slick as a wet whistle, which I've never heard that phrase before. Thank you very much. This has been awesome. This has been fantastic. Have a good one, everybody. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.